everyone and welcome back to Chit Chat with Coral. This week's episode, I debated about speaking about this topic for a very long time, and I just thought that it really needed to be done. So I don't know how my emotions are going to be in this episode, but just be prepared. We're going to be talking about cervical screenings and cervical cancer, a cause very close to my heart. When you get into this video, you will understand why. So let's get into episode 6 of Chit Chat with Coral. As usual, we're going to start with a question of the week. So this week, my question of the week was, hang on, where is it? So yeah, my question of the week was, if you found a lump on your body which wasn't there before, would you go to your doctor about it? Yes or no? And I can happily say 96 people who answered that poll said yes, which is music to my ears, because I genuinely thought in this day and age a lot of people would just palm it off. So the 4% that said no, you should probably go to the doctors if you ever find anything. I don't know, I just think it's very silly not to. It's your life at the end of the day. And then following on from that question, I asked a counter question, which was, if you answered yes, how long would you wait before going to your doctor? 1 to 2 weeks or a few months? And 81% of people said 1 to 2 weeks, which again is music to my ears. If you're waiting a few months, it could be too late. Do you know what I mean? In case it is something. Let's move on to why I asked that question on my Instagram story. Now for me, I have never found a lump, luckily, on my body. However, about 2.5 years ago, I noticed some strange changes within my body, some changes that were happening during sex and after sex. Oh, just a trigger warning, the word sex is going to be used, the word vagina is going to be used. It's going to be a little bit gory, this video, you know, going to talk about blood, going to talk about passing out and stuff. So if that type of stuff isn't for you, just maybe don't watch this video, because the word vagina is going to freak you out. I'm sorry, that word is going to be used a lot in this video. So about 2.5 years ago, I was experiencing some problems within my body in general, and then problems during sex and after sex. So I went to my doctors about it. And she told me they were all things linked to do with the pill, and I had been on the pill for quite a while, and I was like, no, like, I've been on this pill a while, these changes wouldn't happen out of nowhere, like there's genuinely something wrong. And the nurse just kept saying, no, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong. So I listened to her, you know, she's a health professional, of course she's right. Wrong. So I went back again a few months later and said nothing was changing, and she kept blaming the pill. Now, at that point, I was 23 years old, and I was like, can I not have a cervical screening? And she was like, you have to be 25. And I was like, I understand that, but I genuinely am concerned there's something wrong. Can I have a cervical screening? And they just kept saying no. And I think I went to the doctors 2 or 3 times and asked them for cervical screening, and they just kept refusing me and said, you've got to wait till you're 24 and a half, which was really frustrating. So when my letter came through in March 2020, I was like, yes, right, finally, let's get myself booked in. And because of coronavirus, we couldn't get booked in because they weren't carrying out cervical screenings, which just stressed me out a little bit. 2.5 years on, I was still having them same issues during sex, after sex, and just in my body in general. So it definitely wasn't my pill, because they were still happening. And it just wasn't a great time. So roll around July, I finally get my cervical screening booked in. Bearing in mind, that's a long time from when I was supposed to originally have it. So I went in, I think the first week of July, I'm not too sure of the date. I'm gonna sneeze. So yeah, I went in for my cervical screening the first week of July, and do you know what? I wasn't that scared. I was just more worried about, like, you know, like just getting your fanny out, like vagina out, like in front of some random lady. But I was really lucky, my nurse was absolutely lovely. So I went in, it was obviously a really hot summer's day. I had like a little crop top on, I wore like a maxi skirt with a slit. So then obviously when I went and sat on the little table they put you on, I could literally just pull my skirt up, and I didn't have to, like, you know, worry about taking my trousers off. So ladies, if you're going for your cervical screening, I would recommend wearing a skirt, because then you've just got to pull it up. You don't have to like get undressed or feel uncomfortable. But for me, I was really lucky. You know, the nurse chatted with me for like 10 minutes before, asked like the age she'd lost my virginity, so she knew which speculum to use. So yeah, that's what happened, and I'm going to talk you through actually having a cervical screening. So obviously you have that little talk, they tell you what's going to happen, how the results work, and then they take you through to this little table and they pull the curtain saying if you're wearing trousers, take them off. If you're wearing like a skirt, just take off your knickers and you put it on the side. Obviously I went during the coronavirus pandemic, so I had to go alone. Usually you're allowed another person with you, but unfortunately I had to go by myself, so yay for me. Luckily my mum was outside in the car waiting for me, but I was a big girl and I went all by myself, and genuinely there's no pain scale for a cervical screening in my opinion. Like say 1's like no pain and 10's pain, like it wasn't even a 1 on the pain scale. And literally the speculum she put in me, so there's like this plastic tool and it like goes into your vagina and it opens like this. I'm really bad at diagrams. It opens like this, and like it obviously keeps your vagina and cervix all wide and open, and they get a little swab and they just like pop it in, and there you go. They've got some little cells from your cervix to, you know, go off and test them. And that was that. I think like literally the speculum was in me for maybe 30 seconds, not even that, like 30-40 seconds. So the way I see it is, what is 30-40 seconds of uncomfortableness that could potentially save your life? Because so many women do not go for their cervical screenings, which is crazy. Yeah, so please go to your cervical screenings, because like I said, you know, the longest it's probably going to be in there for is 60 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is 60 seconds of pain? Literally. So yeah, that happened. The lady was really lovely, popped my knickers back on, went off, and I was like, cool. Didn't worry at all. Like, I was so not oblivious to like what was being done. I was like, cool, I've gone for my cervical screening, didn't think anything of it, knew my results would come through in 2 weeks' time. And I was naive because I had no clue that they'd come back with anything other than negative. Nothing was found. And when my results came through about 2 weeks later, I was hit like a ton of bricks. So I think they came through around like the 23rd, 24th or 25th of July. I remember I was on the way home from Fort Park, and I think my mum told me that she had a letter come through, so I went and got it the next day because I wasn't living with her at the time. And I've worn a lot of makeup so I don't cry, but if I get emotional, so yeah, I had my letter come through, and it told me that I had some abnormal cells, which is normal, but little me, who's like never ever really had to go to the hospital doctors for anything, was genuinely really concerned. And I was invited to go to the hospital for a colposcopy. Colecoscopy. I think that's how you say it. I'm trying to read it on the leaflet. Colposcopy. Yeah, invited for a colposcopy, just to see what was in there, because they just kind of said you've got abnormal cells and nothing else. And I was panicking. Like, I'm such an overthinker. I was like, what does that mean? I've got abnormal cells. So what is that? Like, what does that mean? So I was panicking for weeks on end. And let me refer to my timeline. Yep, so in August I went for my colposcopy. So I went at like 9 AM on like a Friday morning, and again, because of coronavirus, I had to go by myself. And I've never really been to hospital, so the concept of going to hospital by myself literally terrified me. I was so scared. I didn't really know what was going to happen. So I got there maybe 20 minutes early, and I was sat in the waiting room. Again, I wore a skirt because they needed to examine my cervix. So, you know, easier access, didn't have to get naked. So I went into the room, and it was in the gynecology area of the hospital, and there was the nurse who was going to carry out the colposcopy, and then there was 2 other ladies in there who were like chaperones, who were there to help me. So we sort of discussed, you know, what was going to happen that day, and they said, you know, we're going to like, so, sorry, I keep umming and ahhing, this is really intense. Okay, so what is a colposcopy? So I've got my little leaflet here. So basically it's a more detailed look at the cervix. What they do is they put a speculum inside your vagina, the same type of speculum as when you have your cervical screening, and they put a little camera in there as well to sort of examine your cervix. Now again, this was extremely uncomfortable, and it was longer than a cervical screening, like this camera was maybe up there for 5 or 10 minutes. The camera was fine, like I didn't feel anything. It was more like the pressure of the speculum which hurt. And then, to be honest with you, the nurse wasn't too great at explaining anything to me. She sort of had a screen on like the right hand side of me and was like, you can look at your cervix if you want. I was like, do I really want to see inside my vagina? Probs not a look. So I didn't look. And then she said, right, we need to take some samples. And I didn't think anything of this. And she looked at me, she goes, what I need you to do is you need to clap in a rhythm. So we did this clap in a rhythm, and me and the other nurses in there clapped in a rhythm. And like, the nurse literally didn't tell me what was going to happen. And then suddenly I felt this excruciating pain, like inside, like my vagina. And basically, she had these big scissors. You know, like a barbecue, like, you know, the little scissors where you like flip stuff over. They literally looked like that. And she was cutting pieces of my cervix off. I was like, oh my god, why haven't you told me that? But basically the reason for the clapping and the rhythm of the clapping is it's to distract you from the fact that they're about to cut something off your vagina. And oh my god, it was so painful. Like, obviously the pain only lasted like a second, but my eyes were streaming. It was so uncomfortable. It was unreal. But, you know, the clapping, the breathing, whatever exercise they give you, it really, really does help. So they took, I think, 4 samples. It was very, very painful. So they took 4 samples, and that was that. And let me tell you, the 2 weeks after my colposcopy and biopsy, I was so stressed. I couldn't think about anything else. All I could think about was my results. Every day I'd be waiting for the postman to come. If, like, you know, he came without that mail, I'd be like, is there any more mail? Is there any more mail? When's my mail? You know, I would constantly be bugging our postman because all I wanted to do was know our results. My results. I was so scared. Like I said, I've never done anything with the hospital before. I don't know the wait times, and yeah, it was just a stress. What I failed to mention was, because of the coronavirus pandemic, when I went into the hospital I had to self-isolate for 7 days before. So that was really isolating for me, because I've never gone through, you know, going to hospital or anything, and all I wanted to do was be around my friends and family to talk about it, and I literally couldn't. Like, I was going through something that I'd never gone through before, and I couldn't even have a hug from my friends or even see my friends because I wasn't allowed out. So that was very, very stressful. So roll on the end of August, I finally get my results after like 2.5, 3 weeks, and they weren't great. They were not great. So when you get your results from a biopsy or a cervical screening, there are 3 different things it can come out with, which is SIN 3, SIN 2 or SIN 1, and there are 3 different grades to discuss whether anything further needs to happen. Now SIN 1 just means you've got some abnormal cells, nothing really to worry about, just go for your regular smear, you know, a few years later. SIN 2 means, okay, we probably need to remove these cells before they like develop into something, but they hold a monthly meeting to discuss whether like your case is worth going forward. So for example, if you have the further surgery, it means you cannot have children for about 2 years, and one of the side effects and potential, you know, problems with the surgery is that you can have a premature birth. I think it was like up to like 24 weeks early, something like that, which is crazy. So I was kind of hoping like worst case scenario mine be SIN 2. Now SIN 3 results basically mean that they are high grade precancerous abnormal cells which need to be removed as soon as possible, and that's what mine came back as. My results came back as level 3, so SIN 3, high grade precancerous cells, and I felt my heart drop. I didn't really know what it meant at the time. I was absolutely terrified. I remember bursting into tears, and I just didn't know what to do. I was very anxious. I didn't understand. So they invited me for a surgery called the LLETZ procedure, which I have another leaflet on, which is the large loop excision of the transformation zone. So that basically meant I was going to get all of these cells scraped out of my cervix and burnt off. Now, first of all, I've been hit with this news that I've got precancerous cells. Bearing in mind, if we cut to the beginning of the video, 2.5 years ago, I told the doctors there was something wrong with me and I wanted a cervical screening. I go for my cervical screening and I come out with the highest result. So for me, the doctors should have listened to me 2.5 years ago, because maybe my results would have been a lot lower then and something could have been done sooner. But it is what it is. We still found it early. So I had SIN3 precancerous cells. I was really scared. I didn't know what to do. I was worried about babies and children, how the surgery would affect me. So obviously I spoke to a doctor and they basically said, if you have the LLETZ procedure, you should not try for children for 2 to 3 years. After 2 years is fine. They just say the 3 just to cover their back, but yeah, 2 to 3 years after the surgery. At the time I had a boyfriend, so that would, well, I was in a long-term relationship, so that was something we had to discuss. So I decided to go ahead with the surgery because I wasn't looking to have children anytime soon. So yeah, I decided to go ahead with the surgery. Now, basically this surgery is supposed to be done under local anaesthetic, and I suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, and I get them quite a lot, and the concept of knowing I was going to have this surgery where I had to be awake absolutely terrified me. The fact I was having to go on my own because of coronavirus terrified me again. So I plucked up the courage to call the gynecology unit at the hospital to basically say, is there any way I can have this operation under general anaesthetic so I can be asleep and I don't have to panic about it or have somebody come with me? Now, I thought this was a fair question because at the time restrictions were really loosened, and if you were going to the hospital for any surgery you had to take a coronavirus test. So I said, look, you know, my family members are happy to do the isolation for 7 days before and have a COVID test as well, and you know, provide a negative swab so they can come in for the surgery with me. And the lady I spoke to on the phone, do you know what, she was really rude. It was the lady who carried out my colposcopy and my biopsy, and she turned around and just made me feel really silly. And she told me if I didn't think you could do it awake, I wouldn't have suggested you having the surgery awake. And I just kind of said to her, with all due respect, you met me once for half an hour. You don't know how I'm going to react. I was hysterical on this phone call to her. I said, if I'm hysterical now on the phone at just the concept of it, what am I going to be like when I get in that room? So yeah, so the date of the surgery rolls around. I think it was like the 10th of September, something like that. And I am cacking my pants, like literally. I'm so scared. I can't even explain how scared I am. So I go to the hospital and it just all goes to shit really from there. Oh, I can actually feel in my heart how I felt that day. So I got to the hospital again half an hour early after a week of self-isolating. So, you know, again, I was stuck inside all by myself for a week, basically crying every day because all I wanted was the support of my friends and family. And I had to have that virtually before going in for surgery that I wasn't allowed to have, you know, asleep for my own sanity. So yeah, so I went into the hospital, got to the gynecology unit, and this time it was a male doctor, and he was really lovely. Bearing in mind, like, I've got a face mask on, and he just took one look at me and was like, you're not okay, are you? And I just burst into tears at that point. Like, I'd come in and I was so strong and I was really like proud, like, yes, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna go in and do the surgery, like I could do it awake, it's fine. I was just convincing myself I could do it when I knew deep down I couldn't. And he was like, look, we don't have to do the surgery today, you seem really anxious, we could do it under general. And like, I don't like being a problem. I don't like causing problems and putting people out of their way. So I was like, no, like, it's fine, we'll just do it today. So they prepped me for like the mini surgery. I went into the bathroom, got changed, got into the robe, and I got into the chair. And like, so basically they sit you there and you have to sit like with your legs. So like my legs were like up here, like in this position, and they put my legs in these knee pads because basically the anaesthetic they put in you like causes your legs to shake, so they have to put them in these knee pads and like thigh pads to like keep them in place. And then they like do like 3 to 6 injections like into your vagina so you feel nothing. And the first attempt at trying to put any form of anaesthetic in me, my whole body was shaking. They could not keep me still. I was breathing like really badly, so I started having a panic attack, and the nurses took my mask off and gave me some water. At that point they like said, right, just slowly get yourself down, calm down and cry it out, and we will do the surgery under general anaesthetic. Me being me was like, no, like let me try one more time. So I downed this pint of water and I got back into the chair, and the same thing happened, but instead of me having a panic attack, my whole body gave up on me and I passed out in the chair, which I think is a bit embarrassing, but at the same time it just goes to show, like, I was clearly like ready to have that surgery, but my body just knew like I couldn't hack it awake. So I passed out. I felt like a massive idiot, and I was just in absolute bits in that hospital room. And all I can say is the doctor that was in there who was going to carry out the surgery, and there was 3 nurses in there, were absolutely incredible. Like, one of them put some gloves on and an apron and just gave me a cuddle while I was in absolute hysterics, because I was just, I don't know, like I felt ashamed, I felt embarrassed. I was like, I've come in for this surgery, I feel like an idiot, blah blah blah. So I sat down with the doctor after, and he was like, I've just looked on your notes, you've got a history of anxiety, why would they ever put you in for this surgery awake? I was right the whole time. Like, I knew I should have been asleep. So we booked me in for the LLETZ procedure a few weeks later. I say a few weeks later, it was the 15th of October, because I was going to Paris at the end of September and I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So my quarantine ended on the 14th of October. So I went into surgery on the 15th of October, because again, you still had to isolate before having surgery. So I'd already isolated for 2 weeks. At this point, I was no longer in a long-term relationship. I'd been single for just over a month, I'd like to say. And my incredible best friend Jo got a COVID test, came back negative, and came to stay with me for about 5 or 6 days and looked after me throughout the whole surgery process. And I genuinely am so thankful for that. So we're going to talk about the day of my surgery. So the morning of the 15th of October rolls around. Obviously when you're going in for surgery, you can't wear jewellery, no makeup, no nothing, no nail varnish. So then the evening before, I like had a proper wash, shaved, moisturised, made myself feel nice, wiped off all my nail varnish and left all my jewellery here, and went to the hospital. So my mum dropped me off. Nobody could obviously come with me because of coronavirus again. Coronavirus made this whole thing so much more difficult, because genuinely, if I'd have had people there with me, like in the hospital, I would have been fine. So I went into the hospital and went into the outpatients unit for like the day surgery, because it was only a day surgery. And I got there at, I think, 7 AM in the morning or 7:30, and I took my booking. It's the Vex King Book, Good Vibes, Good Life, and I sat there for ages. I met the doctors, I met the anaesthetist, I can never say the word, who was going to like help me. They asked me lots and lots of questions. So eventually I was prepped for surgery. I had a really sexy gown on, and some sexy socks. Felt fab. And I was really lucky. I got called for surgery at like 10:30 in the morning, whereas some people can be waiting all day. Now, I had never ever had surgery. I'd never even had a tooth out, like nothing like that. So I had no idea what was going on. So as I was called to theatre and I was wheeled into theatre, I started really panicking. It was just bizarre. Like, I just had no emotion like going in. I was just like, cool, like it's gonna happen. And they put the anaesthetic in me. I didn't even count down. Like, all I remember was just being like, what does it even feel like having anaesthetic in me? I think I asked that, and then I don't remember anything. And I woke up eventually, and oh my god, I literally felt like I was high. I was on some sort of come down, coming up. It was absolutely bizarre. I had the driest mouth ever. And all I was asking the nurses was for mouthwash and mints, which is really funny. Like, once I woke up, I was like, I need mouthwash. Why will no one give me any? And I was getting really sassy, apparently, about wanting mouthwash and mints. So at least I know if ever I go for surgery again, to bring myself some mouthwash and mints. But the funniest part, I guess, of the surgery if it can be funny, is when I woke up, because my surgery was obviously in my cervix, which is, you know, in my vagina. It was going to be uncomfortable, there was going to be a lot of blood. I woke up and I pissed myself, which is great. So that was fun to deal with. So I was in the ward when I woke up, and I think I went home about 3 o'clock, and I woke up at 1, so it did take me quite a while to like come back around. So before you leave, you have to be able to walk on your own, go to the toilet, and there not be any blood. But because my surgery was obviously in my vagina, there was going to be loads of blood. They just had to check, you know, I was able to pass water. And oh my god, I could pass so much water. It was unreal. Like, it was actually scary. Like, if you didn't like blood and you went to the toilet after having LLETZ surgery, oh my god, like, you probably pass out. So yeah, you had to walk on your own, pass water obviously on your own, and you had to eat something. So I called the bell and was like, I want to try and walk. And I literally called this bell so many times and nobody came, so I decided to walk by myself. Probably the worst idea ever, because I walked and I fell over, so the nurses picked me up. I think I went for 3 wheeze before I left, like really big wheeze. It's really awkward because they put this thing in the toilet and they have to like check how much you've weed as well. So yeah, that was fun. And then they asked what I wanted to eat. They had sandwiches because it was lunchtime, and I literally think I had a chicken sandwich, but it was so dry that I didn't even want to eat it. So I said to the nurses, like, can I just eat the chicken and not the sandwich? Like, is that okay? So yeah, eventually I got taken out. Well, eventually I was allowed to come out of the hospital. My best friend Jo and my mum picked me up, and they were absolute angels. So after the surgery, I had to have 48-hour care and supervision. So they stayed with me and waited on me and looked after me. All I did was sleep and just chat absolute shit. But the big part, I was in so much pain, it was unreal. Now they tell you that after LLETZ procedure it takes a few days to get back to normal. That is a lie. That is such a lie. I was in so much pain for days. So for 4 weeks after the surgery, you are supposed to, no, 4 to 6 weeks, you're not supposed to have sex or anything up there. Tampon, sex toy, vibrator, penis, dildo, whatever you want to call it, like nothing at all is allowed up that vagina. So you have to buy the really sexy granny pants, which I haven't had since I was maybe like 12 years old. So I had to buy some really sexy granny pants, and I bought maternity pads because that's how much you bleed. So girls, if you're having a LLETZ procedure at all, buy yourself some granny pants and a hot water bottle, maybe like nice cozy dressing gown, and yeah, just get yourself some maternity pads. And Colecoscopy saved my life. Like, genuinely, Colecoscopy saved my life because I was in so much pain. The doctors didn't give me, well, the hospital didn't give me any painkillers. So after the surgery, I called my doctor and they signed me off work for a couple of weeks because there was no way I could go to work. Like, genuinely, I was in so much pain for days on end, and I ended up actually getting a infection after, I think I just had like a water infection, which after surgery is never fun. So that wasn't great either. But yeah, the recovery was really bad. Like, I just felt tired all the time. I was just in a lot of pain. So I want to talk about the results. So luckily I had my incredible best friend Jo, and I had my mum here for a few days. We just spoke about what would happen if the results came back bad and everything. Now, my results came through on Halloween, which is my favourite day of the year, and I came home and I opened the results, and this is probably the weirdest part of the story. Now, my results came back and they said we have like removed the SIN3 precancerous abnormal cells. However, after analysing these cells, we found out they were actually stage 3 cancer, which has now been removed, and there is no sign of disease. And when I tell you, I burst into tears. It was such an incredible day. I then went to the pub, had a few drinks with my friends, Unfortunately, like, no, lockdown 2 got announced that night, so I was really lucky that my results came through on the Halloween, so I was still at the pub with my friends and had some drinks to celebrate. But imagine finding out when you're clear of cancer that you were living with cancer and not knowing. And I think that's the thing I haven't processed about this story and this experience, is that I was, for 6 months of my life, so this started in June, so June, July, August, September, October, so 5 months of my life, sorry, I was going out, seeing friends, socialising, because restrictions had loosened, without even knowing I was high risk. I was living with cancer, and it wasn't just stage 1 or 2, it was stage 3, like very, very, very high in the cancer scale. I've never really dealt with cancer apart from that personally, and I was living with that and I didn't even realise. And I think that's what's been so difficult to process it all. And going through what I went through those few months, you know, it was hard enough going through like a potential cancer scare, but then to find out you were actually, oh fuck's sake, to find out you were actually living with cancer and to not know it is just genuinely scary. And it's just so important to go and get things checked. Like, if you're a girl, please go for your freaking cervical screening, because if I didn't, anything could have happened in a few years to me. And for those 60 seconds of pain and those few surgeries I had, it was so worth it. And I have a completely different outlook on life now, you know. I very much, you only live once, you have one life, live it, you know. That's why I went to Paris in September. We were allowed, I know a lot of people judge me for it, but we were allowed to do that. And you know what, I'm so glad I did, because I didn't know I was as poorly as I was, and I had the best time, and I would do it again at a heartbeat. I wouldn't change anything I went through, and it's made me such a strong person. Like, now I know I can get through anything. But it's a long process. I'm still, you know, months on. We're in January of 2021 and I'm still trying to process the fact that I was living with this horrible disease and I just didn't know it. And oh my god, it just stresses me out. And I just urge any men or women, if there's anything wrong with you, like lumps, symptoms of any cancer, just please go and get it checked out, because it could save your life. Because I genuinely think that if I hadn't have gone, anything could have happened. And I believe that going for that cervical screening saved my life. It saved my life. And yes, I'm through the other end. Yes, I'm healthy and I'm happy again. Okay, yeah, we're going through a pandemic. I can't exactly live the life I want, but oh my god, I'm so much more confident. I'm so much more empowered in myself. And boy, when the world opens again, I will be living my best life, because it just, being faced with something as scary as cancer, I'm not going to be scared to say that word anymore, changes you. And yes, I'm still waiting for therapy to discuss this and to discuss the fact I was living with cancer. This video, I just want to say, isn't for attention. This video is to just make people aware that it does happen. You know, I never, ever, ever in a million years would have thought this would have happened to me. And it did. It can happen to anyone. You know, it can happen to absolutely anyone you know. And it isn't just a thing in the older generation. I am 25. 25. That's young, and I had cancer and I didn't know it until I was clear of it. Shit, I've never said that out loud. So I know I said this video like wasn't to, you know, for attention or sympathy or anything, but at the same time it is a video to reach out. It is a video to sit here and say, if anyone's gone through anything like I have, message me. My DMs are always open, my comment sections are open. If you're going through something like this, message me. If you've had any form of cancer or like know anybody, like please reach out, because I would just love to talk to people who've maybe been through something like me or can relate, because I know like nobody. I've had nobody to talk to my story about, and I think that's the hardest thing. I've accepted to some extent that this happened to me, but I haven't, still don't think I've processed it. I don't even know what to say now, but yeah, so I'm Coral, I'm 25, and I survived having a cancer scare and living with cancer during a global pandemic. What the frick? I know this video was a very different tone to the rest of the series of Chit Chat with Coral, but you know, sometimes you need to get deep, sometimes you need to discuss important and taboo subjects, and that's what I've done today, and I really hope this helps people. I hope this also helps people understand maybe the way I've dealt with the pandemic and seeing my friends. I know I have been judged, you know, because I went to Paris with my friends and hugged them and stuff, but I'm sure if you know me personally, you will now understand why I did that, and I'm sure if you're in the same position, you would have too. But yeah, I'm just want to say thank you for listening, thank you for being there, listening to my story, and if anybody has any questions at all, I'm sure there's things I've missed, if anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to message me. You know my socials, coral.ever.after over on Instagram and coraalfrancis on Twitter. If you know me personally, you can always message me on my personal Instagram, which is coraalfrancis. And next week we will be back with an episode of the Single Chronicles, so the fun side of this series will be back, but I thought it was important to maybe leave what happened to me at the beginning of this year. So that's why this video has come now, and it was the right time to tell my story. So thank you for watching episode 6 of Chit Chat with Coral. I have been Coral, this has been Chit Chat with Coral, the cervical cancer episode, and I will speak to you next week. So goodbye.